You've heard it a million times, right? Art versus science. For centuries, they've been painted as these two totally separate worlds, speaking completely different languages. But is that really the whole story? Today, we're going to dive right into this classic debate and explore the supposed rivalry between these two incredible forms of human creativity. So, what's the real deal here? Are they friends, enemies? Are they, two sides of the same coin working together to help us figure out the universe? Or are they locked in some epic battle for who gets to define the truth? That's the big question we're tackling today. And to help us navigate this, we're going to turn to a pretty amazing guide, the brilliant Nobel-winning astrophysicist S. Chandrasekhar. He was totally fascinated by this whole thing, and he asked a really fundamental question. Why do artists and scientists create things in such wildly different ways? Now, here's the really cool part. Chandrasekhar didn't just give us his own opinion. Nope. Instead, he collected what he called an assortment of remarks from some of the biggest brains in history and just let them argue it out. And that's exactly what we get to do now. We get to watch this epic debate unfold. All right, so let's jump in. First up in this corner, we've got the artists. And for a lot of them, science wasn't this cool partner in wonder. Oh no, it was the enemy, the bad guy, that was basically sucking all the magic and mystery out of the world. And Exhibit A in this case comes from the poet William Wordsworth. He believed that our need to analyze everything, what he called our meddling intellect, well, it doesn't just explain beauty, it destroys it. I mean, listen to this line. We murder to dissect. Wow. That's pretty intense. And Wordsworth wasn't the only one feeling this way. Not by a long shot. The poet John Keats was right there with him. He called science cold philosophy and basically asked, doesn't it kill all the magic? He accused it of wanting to take a beautiful rainbow and just unweave it, turning it into a boring list of facts. And in that amazing line, he says it would clip an angel's wings. Okay, but it wasn't just the poets throwing punches. The scientists fired back. Take the biologist Peter Medawar. For him, this wasn't some friendly disagreement. It was a turf war, a zero-sum game. He basically said, look, you can't have both. When literature shows up, science gets kicked out, and vice versa. So for him, these weren't just two different paths up the same mountain. They were two completely different mountains. So you've got this big divide, right? But what if it didn't have to be that way? What if someone could bridge that gap? Well, that brings us to the hero of our story, a poet who saw science not as an enemy, but as a source of total inspiration. Yep, while Wordsworth and Keats saw this big, scary threat, one of the greatest poets of the time just broke ranks entirely. He looked at the world science was uncovering and found nothing but beauty. And that poet was Percy Shelley. According to the philosopher A.N. Whitehead, Shelley was on the total opposite end of the spectrum from Wordsworth. He didn't just put up with science, he absolutely loved it. To him, it was all about joy and peace and illumination. It's no wonder he got the nickname the scientist's poet. And you can see exactly how he did it in his poem, The Cloud. I mean, it's a perfect description of the water cycle. You got the evaporation, condensation, all of it. Super accurate. But here's the genius part. He doesn't just give you a science lesson. No, he turns it into this amazing adventure story, giving the cloud its own voice, its own personality. He mashes science and poetry together, and the result? The world becomes more magical, not less. But look, even with a hero like Shelley, that big divide, it didn't just disappear. And this wasn't just some abstract debate for intellectuals. It was a real personal struggle for some of the greatest scientists ever. It's like as their scientific brain got bigger and stronger, they felt another part of themselves just fading away. And this next one, this is a bombshell. It's from Charles Darwin. He actually confessed that as he got older, his ability to enjoy stuff like Shakespeare or music just died. He said it was so dull it made him sick. He felt like his mind had become a machine for grinding general laws out of facts, and that the part of his brain that appreciated art had just atrophied. It withered away. Can you imagine? Or take Michael Faraday. The guy basically discovers electromagnetic induction, which, is the foundation for almost all modern technology. And when some politician asked him, hey, what's this good for? Faraday's answer wasn't some grand speech about human progress. Nope. He just says, why, sir, there is every probability that you will soon be able to tax it. Super practical, for sure, but maybe not the most inspiring answer, right? And this is exactly what Shelley was worried about. He warned that if we focus only on science and we lose that poetical faculty, our inner worlds would just shrink. And his conclusion is pretty chilling. He says, man, having enslaved the elements, remains himself a slave to facts, a slave to usefulness, with no room for the soul. So all of this brings us to Shelley's mic drop moment. It's an essay he wrote called A Defense of Poetry. And in it, he lays out this incredible argument for why poetry isn't just some nice little hobby. He argues it's absolutely crucial for our survival, for us to even be fully human. So what does he say? He says poetry is the thing that makes the best and most beautiful parts of our world immortal. It grabs those little moments of life that would just vanish otherwise. He even calls it something divine. And this is a direct shot at science, he says poetry is at once the center and circumference of knowledge. Basically, he's saying all of science fits inside of poetry, not the other way around. And then he hits us with his most famous line ever. It's a huge, ambitious claim. Shelley says that poets are the unacknowledged legislators of the world. Not kings, not scientists, but poets. And why? Because poets are the ones who shape how we imagine the world, what we believe is right and wrong. They build the very foundation that societies are built on. Okay, so after hearing that incredibly passionate defense of poetry, let's circle all the way back to where we started, with our guide, the astrophysicist S. Chandrasekhara. Because after reading all of that from Shelley, he was left with one last really big question. And this is the question we're going to leave you with too. Chandrasekhar read Shelley's essay and it hit him. Why isn't there a defense of science? Why hasn't some brilliant scientist written something with that same fire, that same poetic soul? Why the silence from the science side of the aisle? And maybe, as Chandrasekhar himself suggests, the very fact that we even have to ask that question, well, maybe that's the start of an answer right there.